It's not a board advisory, maybe.
Oh, yeah, people like that are going to a different email.
And it's the budget hearing, not the board advisory meeting. Please.
He's our board advisory person.
Just budget hearing would be fine. All right. Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with our item 1, which is our budget hearing. At this time, the Governing Board of Creighton Elementary School District Number 14 shall hold a public hearing to present the fiscal year 26 expenditures budget in accordance with statute and board policy. And I will turn it over to Ms. Shapiro. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, board members, and Superintendent Mann. We're happy to present the adopted budget. There are no changes from the proposed. There are several up in the air things happening at this time. This is not necessarily common. What is common every year is that we typically, at this point, 8 times out of the 10 do not know what the budget is. And we do go ahead and adopt the budget with our best information at the time, with the intention, a lot of times our budget forms are not ready. This year there was a delay in the actual website opening up for us to upload our proposed budget. There's just been a series of interesting happenings, and some of them are things we have dealt with in the past. And what is typical is that we move forward with our best adopted budget with the knowledge that before September 15th, we will do a revised. When we get the final numbers, the final information, the final forms, and when everything comes together in the legislature, then that's when we will have all of the actual numbers and figures. So what we do with the adopted, again, is our best information at the time. I did want to speak to what's currently happening with the potential of the government. That is something that it would be pretty unprecedented. So there aren't necessarily mechanisms in place that we're like, oh yeah, that's a fine, this is what we'll do. But what I can tell you is, because of our practice with our fund balance reserve, we have cushion. We will be able to start on July 1 with no bumps in the road. We won't have to delay anything like contracts or anything like that. We also have other mechanisms available to us. One is to register warrants with the county. That's like a short-term loan if we needed it to pay our warrants to our AP and to our payroll. Fortunately for us, we would have, I haven't calculated it, I apologize, but I would say several months of reserve balance to operate off of until our actual budget comes through. The other option are short-term financing loans that we could potentially take out for the district. And again, these would be short-term in nature, so would cost very little. So we have mechanisms in place to deal with this situation as it unfolds, and we're pretty confident that our operations will have no disruptions.
Just to be clear for people in the audience or watching, when you say government shutdown, you mean at the state level?
At the state level, I apologize. Thank you.
I just want to make sure everybody understands.
Yeah, it's our Arizona legislature, and they have done a couple of different things that are not typical. One is the Senate closing without the House closing, and that didn't. That was an interesting choice, and we'll just kind of see how it unfolds. It is concerning. They will have to get to a budget somehow, some way. We're just not sure how long that will take. My immediate concern was the district finances and ensuring that we are okay, ready to operate, and ready to move forward with the plan and with our SOFG goals.
Board members, any other questions or comments? I think the only thing that I do want to ask, if July 1st comes and a budget has not been reached upon, that's when the state shutdown would go down. So if we could actually have some kind of something in writing that would say what would be the next steps and for how long would that carryover balance take us?
Absolutely.
Especially for like the 30th or the 31st, we haven't heard anything. I would like at least like us to be prepared in case we need to go into any emergency meetings or have any conversations. I would like that to be worked on just in case, because it's most likely than not that we could go into a government shutdown. So I just want to make sure that we're also prepared for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. And then Ms. Juarez, did we have any public comments?
No. And then you would just need to ask if anybody in the audience has any questions.
And anybody in the audience have any comments they would like to make regarding our the budget hearing? All right, going twice. Anyone want to make a public comment? Hearing none. Okay. I will adjourn our budget hearing meeting and move over to our regular agenda meeting at 6:07 p.m. The Creighton School District understands that our community of schools is located on the ancestral land and the Otham Druid and Akimel Otham people who descended from Hohokam and have inhabited these lands since time immemorial. The Otham, whose name translates literally to people, are a vibrant culture and community spanning countless generations into the past, continuing to thrive in the present, and carrying a powerful legacy for generations into the future. With this acknowledgement, the Creighton School District formally recognizes that the traditional care and keeping of these lands by Indigenous people as an aspirational model of community stewardship that we are committed to honor with practices, policy, and human relations. That brings us to 1B, which is our Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Lauren, do you mind leading us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings us to item 1C, roll call. Do we have Ms. Ayers online by chance? Yes. Okay. Ms. Ayers is joining us virtually. Hi, Ms. Ayers. Then we have Ms. Gibson McLean, myself, Mr. Jones, and Ms. Marquez. We want to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting and remind the audience of the request to address board cards that must be completed and submitted to the board secretary if they wish to speak to an agenda item. Board policy provides for 2 cards, white cards to be submitted in order to speak to an agenda item and blue cards to be submitted in order to speak during public comments. Due to the open meeting law, board members are not allowed to address the items that are not on the agenda, and this is per policy BEDH. With that, it brings us to 2A, approval of agenda. I move the governing board approve the agenda as presented.
I would like to move 8D to after reports.
What, I'm sorry?
8D
8D until after,
reports. After, sorry, board and superintendent report.
okay, so make it like a 3C.
Yes.
All right, I have a motion to amend our agenda to moving item, hold on a second, 8D
8 David, 8D
to
David,
to
3C.
3C. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you for that. That brings us to 2B, which is adoption of the 2025-26 budgets pursuant to policy DB. We just had our budget hearing. We had no comments and everything was presented to us. So with that, I will move the governing board adopt the total aggregate school district budget per ARS 15905 for fiscal year 25-26. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Go roll on this? No. Okay, cool.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, motion passes. That brings us to 3A, which is governing board reports. Ms. Marquez, I'll go ahead and get started with you.
Hello, everybody. So I hope everyone's having a decent summer. My report, I'm going to start with a few weeks ago, I went to the ASBA Summer Leadership Institute conference with a few other members of our leadership team. And there was one session in particular where they were discussing the 4 C's of board leadership. And they're discussing how board members need to be curious, charitable, conscientious, and constructive. And during those exercises, I found myself saying, well, at Creighton, we do the student outcomes focused governance. And I swear all weekend I was talking about SOFG and then how that as a board member, it's making me be more curious, more charitable, more conscientious, more constructive. And as a team, we all work together like that. So it really kind of like took me back full circle to recognize like how the work that we're doing is being really effective and how it's, changing my viewpoint and how I'm leading. So it was really good. I know there was a few other folks who I was kind of hanging out over the weekend and they're like, oh, enough with the SOFG. I'm like, sorry, it just keeps, it's relevant. And then also with the conversation with Ms. Shapiro at that conference, we were again discussing SOFG. And one great thing that she pointed out to me that really stuck was that, the reason it's working so well is because all of us are doing it, like the whole, not just the board, not just the leadership, but all of us. And it is, I guess, trickling down to the principals and the teachers. And I've heard some teachers talk about, well, this, what I'm doing, this aligns with the SOFG. And so it's really cool, So again, like I've said before, it works if you work it. And I think we're doing a really great job working it. So that was exciting to see and to be able to share with people from other school districts, because SOFG is out there and people do have questions and they're wondering, like, does it work? Is it worth it? And I can honestly say, yeah, for us it is. But again, we're very exceptional here at Creighton. So anyway, so that was point 1. When I returned, I got to have a great meeting with Gretchen and her team with the Exceptional Student Services and Dorothy. And so it was really cool to get some information about what our district is doing to help our students with special needs, and how as a board member I can help with that and keep the focus on that. So, we're improving outcomes for them as well. So that's really cool. I'm excited to get to meet one-on-one with more of our leadership in our district and see what I can do from the dais to be of service to our kids. So, and our community, of course. And then the next thing, so I think a lot of I've, a couple of years ago when Tom Horn decided to first sue us for dual language learning, I started a group that was meeting monthly. Now we meet quarterly, of just people from around the valley who support dual language learning. We've had researchers, educators, activists, parents show up to this. And at our last meeting on Saturday, we had a candidate for the superintendent of public instruction in Arizona, Dr. Terry Ruiz. And it was cool to hear her speak about, her background and why she's running for this position. I think, we all could probably agree that in Arizona, we do need better leadership and education at the very top. So it was cool to see someone come out and be engaged and talk to us. So we'll see how that works out in the future. But again, the dual language learning is something that our communities and our state are very passionate about, and all the research will show you how effective it is. And so I'm glad that, we can continue to support that, and hopefully we'll get some leadership that also supports that. And, obviously with everything going on in the world right now, I think it's scary when my kid comes up to me and says, hey mom, what's Iran and what's going on there? So we are kind of in a perilous time. And I think, as a school district and as a community, obviously there's not too much we can do on that scale, but I think whatever we can do as a community to kind of ready ourselves, to tighten our bonds, to strengthen our village, hopefully that can start, taking more form. And I want to try to get out there more and speak with our community and we've got a great resource center, and let's see how we can connect our families to that. And, should there, heaven forbid, be some major emergency, how are our schools prepared to handle that? So that's a conversation that, perhaps the leadership team and ourselves on the board can start talking about, because it's better to be prepared than not to be. So, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Marquez. Mr. Jones?
I'm going to pass on my report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Ayers, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, if you would like to give your governing board report, we would love to hear it.
I don't have too much. I'm sorry I can't be there tonight. I finally went on vacation. I'm not missing the heat because it's wonderful here, and I wore my sweater for like the first 4 days I was here. I was freezing my butt off. So I hope everybody is having a great summer and taking some time for themselves. And I will definitely be there in the next board meeting.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being committed to the governing board, even though you're out on vacation. We all appreciate that. Ms. Gibson McLean?
I don't really have anything also to share tonight other than hope everybody's having a good summer.
Awesome. Thank you. And the only thing that I will say is that, yes, Creighton School District, regardless of what's going on in the whirlwinds, there's a lot of stuff that we are going to be celebrating here, and we're going to remain focused to our students. One thing I know that I love about Creighton, and this is what drew me even to want to run for this position, is the family-oriented, takes a village model that we really carry on, not just for our students, but our staffs and our community. So just know that we will do everything to protect the students that are here. I always say that when I advocated as a parent, not being on this seat, I saw the struggles and the barriers that were put into families. So the same way that I advocate for my kids, I advocate for the children of Creighton. So just know that we're good, and we're going to remain focused, focusing on their academics and making sure that they're their fullest potential selves, regardless of what's going on around us. So thank you. And then with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Mann.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'll try to keep it brief. I just have a plea to all of our staff members. Everyone always thinks that school's over and everyone's just eating bonbons and sitting by the pool. But I know a lot of you have been working very hard through the summer. And so this is my plea to everyone to please be conscientious about taking a little bit of time for yourselves. As we were preparing for this meeting, one of the things I noticed is the whole team was working on getting some answers to questions over the weekend. It was a kind of a 4-day holiday weekend for us. And I realized, oh my goodness, all these people, they're still working hard, and they're just not taking a moment to breathe because they're so dedicated to what they're doing. And so my plea for everyone is, please find whatever time you can to take a little bit of time for yourself and your family to recharge and rejuvenate, because it seems like nowadays summer doesn't last that long, and we blink and the school year is back again, and it is on. So just want to make sure everyone gets a chance to rejuvenate and get ready for going into the next school year. And thank you so much to all of you for all your hard work and effort. Any staff members who are listening, please join us for our Welcome Back rally. We'll have a letter going out in about 2 weeks. We're going to have a great keynote speaker, Mr. Justin Campbell, who I think many of you got to work with during a workshop that we did earlier this year. And we're very excited for the messaging that he's going to be bringing to us and helping us create a really powerful kickoff experience. And also many thanks to the team that's getting our new teacher orientation ready to go for the week prior to that.
Thank you. And I'm going to take some time back because I did forget 2 important things. One of them is our Get Ready for our Back to School and Resource Fair. That's going to happen on July 19th at Excelencia School Center from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Thank you to Mr. Carvajal and his team for setting that up. We're going to have amazing backpacks and supplies for any Creighton and honestly any community member. So we have lots of donations coming our way. And also one other information is that we have a great community partner, the Creighton Community Foundation. They are having a summer youth camp for sports for kids that are 6th through 8th grade. And they will be held on Tuesdays and Thursdays, July 8th through the 24th from 9 to 12. And guess what? It's completely free. So if you guys know of any 6th or through 8th graders in the Creighton community that would love to take advantage of this, they can let any of our staff know or follow them on social media. And they also have Korean Creatives, which is art. So they have an art program and a sports that's running as well from 9 to 12. And I think this is amazing for our students to have a place to be at during summer. So thank you to the Korean Community Foundation for those services. And then with that brings us to 3C. And that is the approval of principal for Larry C. Kennedy Elementary School. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Lauren to introduce this.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. After a comprehensive search advertised through various channels, 9 viable applicants emerged for the principal position at Larry C. Kennedy School. The top 4 candidates participated in an in-basket activity, followed by 3 candidates in the interview process. A panel of 14, including teachers, staff, students, and parents, recommended the top 2 finalists for interviews with the superintendent and other cabinet members. Marta Lorena Hernandez is the recommended candidate. Martha began her career in Creighton at William T. Mackin as a dual language 6th grade teacher in 2004. She transitioned into coaching in 2012, first as a student achievement teacher, then as an instructional coach. Since 2019, she has served as District Special Projects Coordinator for Innovation in the Arts and Sciences, with extensive experience in school leadership, strategic planning, staff development, curriculum oversight, and community engagement. She has been recognized by our governing board for her outstanding excellence in 2014. She holds a master's in educational leadership from Northern Arizona University and a Bachelor of Arts degree in elementary education from Arizona State University.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Lauren. And I'm so excited for this. I'm just going to share a personal story that nobody asked for, but I think it's imperative for me to share. I have had a child in this district since 3rd grade. And since then, he's a junior in high school now that's going to be. And I know that he went to school with Martha's kids. But since then, I have seen Martha all around everything that she has done, and not only because she reflects the majority of our community, 86% Latino kids that we serve, and it is important for our children to see themselves in leadership roles. And I cannot be more happier than to have Martha, wonderful jefa around, that speaks the language, understands the culture of the students, and now will be over Larry C. Kennedy. So with that, I am forever moved to, oh yeah,
I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say,
And any other
an
board
East
members, I'm sorry.
Sider. We got a real East Sider here as a principal. I love it.
Anybody else want to say anything before I make the motion? All right.
All great.
I would like to say something.
Yes, Miss Ayers, go ahead.
I have the pleasure of living next to Martha and her lovely family. And I couldn't be more thrilled that she will be taking over this beautiful school and working with all the staff and the students at this school. So I'm thankful.
And it shows a lot for our district, right? We have community members that are working within our district. And to me, that's hugely important, especially when it comes to civic engagement, because now we have our own staff members that get to be voting members of our district to take us to the next level. So it's just all really awesome. And with that, I move the governing board approve Marta Hernandez for the position of principal effective July 1st, 2025.
Second.
Nope.
Ms. Marquez beat you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, congratulations. And if you would like to come up, I'll have to, if you don't want to give a few words. And if not, we'll take a quick 5 to 10 minute recess so you have the time to take pictures with your family.
I just want to say that I am honored for this opportunity and this position. Larry C. Kennedy has been something that has been in my vision for such a long time. I am very passionate about science and outdoor learning and inquiry learning. And so when the vision was just on paper, I saw myself as a principal. And when this opportunity opened up this year, I really ran for it. So I appreciate everybody believing in me, and I want to thank my family for supporting me through the very rigorous process, and my 2 boys and my husband. And my parents are watching on YouTube, and my neighbor Diane is also a district employee or former district employee, so she's here with us. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much. And then we'll go ahead and take a quick 10-minute recess so you can take pictures. Thank you.
Use your gavel.
Yeah. Get these people in order, President.
Well, I have my picture in it. I'm just waiting
I
to
know.
see
Oh.
if they slowly, yes. All right, thank you so much for that. That was great. That we're going to go ahead and continue with our agenda, which brings us to 4A. This is our student outcomes focused governance portion. In the fall of 2023, Creighton School District adopted a student outcomes focused governance framework to ensure a focus on improving student outcomes. En el otoño del 2023, el Distrito Escolar de Creighton adoptó el marco de gobernanza enfocada en resultados estudiantiles para garantizar un enfoque en mejorar los resultados académicos de los estudiantes. This framework is grounded in 6 research-informed competencies. Este marco se basa en 6 competencias fundamentadas en investigaciones. 1. Vision and goals. 1. Visión y metas. 2. Values and guardrails. 2. Valores y restricciones. 3. Monitoring and accountability. 3. Monitoreo y rendición de cuentas. 4. Communication and collaboration. 4. Comunicación y colaboración. 5. Unity and trust. 5. Unidad y confianza. 6. Continuous improvement. 6. Evolución constante. Guided by the six competencies, the board created a set of goals and guardrails. The goals reflect the community's vision for student success, and the guardrails reflect the community values and set boundaries for the leadership. Guiados por estos 6 competencias, la mesa directiva creó un conjunto de metas y límites. Las metas reflejan la visión de la comunidad para el éxito estudiantil. Las restricciones reflejan los valores de la comunidad y marcan lo que los líderes no deben permitir en la búsqueda de esas metas. Progress monitoring, monitoreo de progreso. Within this framework, one of the most critical components is progress monitoring. Dentro de este marco, uno de los componentes más importantes es el monitoreo del progreso. Progress monitoring is a structured conversation between the board and superintendent where we ask. El monitoreo del progreso es una conversación estructurada entre la mesa directiva y el superintendente donde preguntamos, ¿Does student performance match our goals? ¿El rendimiento estudiantil refleja nuestras metas? Is there evidence of growth toward the goals? ¿Hay evidencia de crecimiento hacia las metas? Is the strategy strong enough to produce the growth? ¿La estrategia es lo suficientemente sólida para lograr ese crecimiento? When done well, monitoring supports the district by, cuando se realiza correctamente, el monitoreo beneficia al distrito al modeling a reflective leadership, modelar un liderazgo reflexivo, clarifying strategies and next steps, aclarar estrategias y próximos pasos, setting clear priorities across the system, establecer prioridades claras en todo el sistema, and providing continuous feedback for improvement. Ofrecer retroalimentación continua para mejorar. This is how we will hold ourselves accountable to the outcomes our students deserve. And this is how governance truly serves the community. Así es como nos hacemos responsables de los resultados que nuestros estudiantes se merecen. Así es como la gobernanza realmente sirve a la comunidad. And with that being said, we will get started with our Guardrail 1 Report 2. And I'll bring it over to Dr. Pombo.
President Carrillo, members of the board, Superintendent Mann, we're excited to present Guardrail 1. We have several of our teaching and learning directors presenting with me this evening. So we have Mr. Carvajal, Ms. Kaiser, and then Dr. Burgess. So they all have different areas of this guardrail that they'll be presenting tonight. So Guardrail 1 is the superintendent will not neglect student social emotional health, wellness, and development. And we had 2 intro measures for this guardrail. The first one is the percent of students in grades 6 through 8 who respond favorably to indicators of self-management on the Panorama survey will increase from 62% in May of 2024 to 66% in May of 2025. And the Panorama student survey in August of 2014, researchers at Harvard Graduate School of Education and Panorama Education launched the first of its kind collaboration to develop a valid and reliable survey tool to measure student perceptions of teaching and learning. And then our interim measure number 1.2 is the percent of persons utilizing the Creighton Family Resource Center who respond favorably to indicators of customer satisfaction on the Listen for Good survey will increase from 0% in May 2024 to 25% by May 2025. And the Listen for Good client satisfaction survey tool was designed to give organizations the tools to listen and respond to their clients' needs and experiences through high-quality, sustainable feedback loops. High-quality feedback practices provide an effective vehicle for centering equity within our organization's work. So for interim measure 1.1, our goal was to increase from 62% to 66% in May 2025. And so we have here the fall results from our students, and we have the spring results from our students. And this was based on 236 responses. And in this one, we did not meet our goal. The percent of students in 6th through 8th grade who respond favorably to the indicators was 65%, and our goal was 66%. The current rate of 65% is higher than it was in spring of 2024. 87% of the students report they were polite to other students in the last 30 days, an increase of 3% from the fall. The question continues to have highest positive response. 43% of the students report that within the last 30 days, they were able to keep calm even when someone was bothering them, a decrease of 3% from the fall. This question continues to have the lowest positive response rate. So we did not meet this measure. However, we had some subgroups exceed this measure. Female students responded with 67%, and 7th and 8th grade students, 7th grade 69%, and 8th grade students 67%. Interim measure 1.2, and we do have a lot of questions at the end that I'm going to go over from these two interim measures. The percent of persons utilizing the Creighton Family Resource Center who respond favorably to indicators of customer satisfaction on the Listen for Good survey increased from 0% to 25%. Survey development is complete. So the survey development involved extensive collaboration between the Creighton staff, First Things First, and Listen for Good. The final vetting of our survey was completed on November 20th, 2024. The survey responses were collected from December 2024 to March 2025 with 41 completed surveys. And we exceeded our interim measure 1.1 goal by 16%, increasing from the target of 25% to an actual result of 41%. And I'm going to ask Mr. Carvajal to come up here and share a little bit more about the survey from this slide.
Members of the board, superintendent, men, executive team members, and members of the community, it is my pleasure to be here this evening to share this great data with you. I'm super excited about all of the work that we do in our community, for our community in our department. And so I get the privilege to share this with you. And so everybody loves surveys, right? Especially when they're long and they ask you all of these very private, intrusive questions. But when you have the right person walking you through the survey and telling you why is it important to collect your voice, then it all makes sense. Then there's trust, there's support, and then you get to voice your concerns and the need for services that you have. That's what we do in the Family Resource Center. And so as we collect all of these responses in these long services, people, our family said, you guys are good at these things. And so we put them into 3 different themes. And the first theme is that satisfaction, which was the main goal. And then the second theme was, is the services that we're providing helping make connections with other families in the community, and is helping you feel less stress as a parent, as a caregiver. And the last theme that we were able to withdraw from the data is what we are offering, the resources and the support that we're offering is what you need, or what else do you need? And so I'm very happy to say that 100% of the participants said that they highly recommend our center. 91% of the respondents stated that the center has met their needs. So for us, we always put resources and we wonder, is this the gap in services that we need to fulfill? Are we on the right track? And so they're telling us 91% that yes, we're on the right track. And finally, when we work with the most fragile members of the community, members that had high trauma, that lacked basic needs, as clothing, as housing, that they experience all of these inequities and inopportunities. We never want to think of this as just a job. We want to make sure that when we see the person in front of us, we see the humanity and the dignity, and without judgment, without bias, without inequities. And so we ask them, do we do it well? And do we do it with compassion, with help? And they say yes. 1% of them, they said that they feel respected and that the service that we provide is helpful and caring. We also wonder, is what we're offering you helping you? And they said, yes, thanks to the services and the supports, we feel less stress. Thanks to the classes and the supports that you're providing. 91% of them stated that they feel more connected to other parents and communities that they didn't know about. And then they also said that they, through the Family Resource Center, they feel friendships and relationships that are being formed when they come for those events, those classes, those services. And last but not least, I want to say that 71% of the respondents, they come to receive help with food, childcare, utility bills, clothing, and more, often a few, and when I said a few, it's between 4 and 7 times a month. Now, our philosophy in the department is we give you the fish, but we want to teach you how to fish. And so the question and one of the questions on the surveys is, as a result of your participation in this Family Resource Center, the program in the classes, what is it that you're getting? What's the impact? Yes, we're fulfilling this need, but what is it that you're walking away? Besides that backpack, besides that resource, what change have we created in you as a human being? And they said, and you have many choices in here, but I just want to highlight 3. I have more confidence in my parenting skills. I'm just going to say it again because this is powerful. I have more confidence in my parenting skills. I am less stressed. And if you're a caregiver, you know how stressful it is to take care of young human beings. And the last part that I love, which is in perfect alignment with that SOFG, I have a stronger relationship with my child. And so people are being better parents, less stress, and getting along better with their kids. And now I want to go to the next slide because I want to tell you that not everything is good. And then and that's the purpose of the survey, because we want to make sure that is, what are the gaps in the services? What is something that we can bring to our center that will fulfill the needs in the community? And many of the parents says that they need help completing applications. In fact, it was 50% of the respondents. And that's true among departments and schools. Forms can be very intimidated. Their families feel like if they check a box marks or answer a specific question, that may have a negative impact in the future. And so again, we go back into the explaining the reason why we ask those things or why that application has that specific need for that data. More financial support. I keep buying the Powerball tickets to see if I can win, so I can help everybody in the center and resolve all of the financial needs of the district. But meanwhile, we're gonna do more advocacy work through the legislation, and anybody with large pockets, send them our way, please. We need their money, okay? And better access to technology. And when they said access to technology, they didn't say they didn't have devices here in Creighton. They said at home. They want Wi-Fi, they want other type of devices so they can complete those referrals and access other services. And they love us so much, and they said, we would like the center to extend their service hours. So they want more of us, more open. And just as a fun data, who is this wonderful people that we get the opportunity to serve? And so the people that we get an opportunity to serve is a very diverse group of families. Almost 97% of the respondents identify themselves as Hispanic Latinos. 100% identify as women. And when we ask, we know we serve families and they're male caregivers, but they're working. So usually the women come to the center, and their ages range from 25 years old to 74 years old. 50% do not speak English as their first language, and then almost 28% are single parents or caring for a child with disabilities. That's the importance and the powerful of this Listen for Good survey. Great information. I'm so happy to I got an opportunity to tell you. And if you're interested in there, 20 other 3 responses, different questions that they're very, very revealing of who we serve and what the needs that they have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So our inputs, what's working? The academic director for student support inclusive practices position has been hired. So we have Dr. Burgess over there. 4 of the 4 teaching and learning coaches for student support have been hired as well. The Listen for Good survey has been fully utilized, and we have our first data set to share. What needs more attention? 6th grade responses were lower overall than 7th and 8th graders, suggesting a possible need for a focus with that group. Harmony and ruler implementation were delayed due to unanticipated staff vacancies and have been reorganized. So we are planning for that for next year. The role of teaching and learning coach for student support is being focused on and clarified. Panorama student surveys require parent consent, and some parents exercise their right to opt out. And we'll talk about that more on one of the questions later. And Panorama is available until March 2026. Before renewing, the district is considering an alternative tool from Fastbridge, which is Sabres. And Sabres is already in our package for all of our testing materials. And so Sabres, we're also researching, do we, based on the permissions, if we need to have permission based on their questions for that test, so we'd be able to have more students respond. And it's also part of their testing, so they could do it when they're done taking the test and do the survey. So we're definitely doing that next year, but we want to make sure we have the Panorama as our baseline and then do them simultaneously so we get baseline data for Sabres this next year. So our first board question, Ms. Kaiser is going to help answer this question.
Madam President, governing board members, Superintendent Man, leadership team, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this question. What systems are in place to ensure students with the lowest self-management scores, the example provided was a 6th grade male special education student, are receiving differentiated intentional support throughout the school year, not just at survey time? I'd like to highlight and remind about the multi-tiered systems of support provided for all students, and that special education is not a separate track from that system. So when we think about the multi-tiered systems of support, we think about that tier 1 that has access to all students. All students have access to tier 1. Tier 2 provide more comprehensive supports, and then there's also tier 3, which tends to be our students who are identified under the special education banner. Our special education students are general education students first and have access rights to all the same opportunities of our general education students. So throughout the year, when they're in their homeroom, if they're in the section of the day on the schedule that focuses on that social emotional learning, whether that be through Sanford Harmony, other social emotional curriculums, and in the future, the access to Ruler and that framework and structure is access to all of our students in all tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. If we're looking for more of that customized, individualized for our students with special education, that is one way that we can support through our department or through our coaching cycles. Our special education coaches spend time directly in the classroom, working with teachers, and provide that one-on-one support and brainstorming, oftentimes a thought partner should there be a student that may be identifying behaviors that may require additional support. Maybe they be interventions, some social emotional language. So through our coaching cycles, one-on-one with our special education teachers, and our coaches can provide that individualized support for our teachers to help support our students. Additionally, the power of a special education team is that multidisciplinary team, which means there are lots of people who have their heads together to support the unique needs of individual students. So as noted, there is oftentimes collaboration naturally at that site team with the school psychologist and other special education team members. So if we're recognizing a student may have difficulty with self-management or may have some different social emotional needs, oftentimes our school teams are collaborating regularly with our occupational therapists through classroom observations. So we need to consider some different sensory accommodations or sensory input from our speech and language pathologists. Are there communication needs or areas that might be able to accommodate it or supported through other related services? Many of our school psychologists have great experience with looking at supporting those with challenging behaviors, coming in and maybe completing a functional behavior assessment, coming in for some observational data to identify the ABCs, the antecedents, the behavior, and the consequence, and then make some recommendations for some more customized customized supports. That may be funneled through a functional behavior assessment. There may be some recommendations for our school teams to implement a positive behavior intervention system plan. So the teams on school sites also have some that customize natural conversation through their special education site team meetings or individual conversations with teachers if they want to focus on an individual student. It's also a very powerful tool to utilize the IEP or the special education process to support individual students. That IEP is intended to be a living, breathing document where we develop it with the best information we have at the beginning, and we're progress monitoring to see how students are doing. And if we're recognizing that the behaviors or there's a spike in behavior or students might need something more, we can always utilize that IEP process and call that team together formally to be looking at the components of the IEP. Part of those components are looking at those present levels of academic and functional performance. And so we're looking at where are the bright spots, where are the celebrations of the students, how are we building on those strengths, and where are those identified areas of need. One area specifically that is required for every single IEP and for the IEP team to consider, there's a section on the IEP identified as special considerations. And that special considerations requires the team to be thinking about what else is needed. Is the student maybe visually impaired? Is there maybe a hearing need or a communication need? In one section, the team is required to discuss and identify and build supports around our behaviors. And that is a true continuum of services individualized for the student. So not only, as I mentioned before, that special education is part of that greater whole of MTSS, that multi-tiered systems of supports through individualized coaching, through the multidisciplinary teams on the site, as well as that IEP process, are ways that we can customize and truly individualize additional supports throughout the year based on the individual student needs.
Thank you. Do we have any follow-up questions or comments? I have a couple. So everything that you just explained, are those new practices that we're going to have given this data, or are these things that have been implemented in the district already?
Those are systems that are naturally in place. So MTSS with tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 are systems that we have in place, Madam President, but that is an area that I know that we are looking under the direction of Dr. Burgess to really improve and become better at. So I do recognize that as a system in place, but we as a whole recognize that that is an area to respond to our student needs. That IEP process isn't always process that's there, as I mentioned, is required for each individualized education plan. So the systems are there. I do believe we are getting better at implementing them with more true fidelity and using those research-based programs, such as like our ruler framework as identified. That's an area that we've identified district-wide for more implementation and support. So I think to answer your question, Madam President, a little bit of both, that we have some systems in place, but to be better at implementing them with more consistency, I think that is a goal that we have in ESS as well within the district as well.
Okay, because the only reason I asked that, the question was, what specific differentiated intentional supports throughout the year are we receiving for kids who have the lowest self-management? And in those responses, I didn't hear anything different that's being done versus what we systematically or regulatory or by requirement are doing. So I don't, at least for me, I don't feel like that question has fully been answered. And it doesn't have to be questioned right now, but I am looking at reading this question, and given these systems, I understand that these are systems that we have in place, but it's not giving me what are we going to do different to ensure that we don't have to support the lowest self-management scores, right? Versus all students and all these things in order for us to get different outcomes. And I understand these things have been occurring, but obviously we still have this data. So I haven't heard what different approaches are going to be done in order to make sure that our lowest self-management scoring individuals are being taken care of. So that doesn't have to be necessarily
No, I
answered
appreciate
right
that.
now, but I'm just looking for more in depth of clearly this hasn't been working. So what are we going to do differently moving forward when it comes to that specifically?
And Madam President, I just one thing I think that's important to point out, we have shifted in how we do our work with the shift to student outcomes focused governance. So the power of this process is we hadn't identified this data previously. Right. So we were, not that I'm not saying it as an excuse, but because we weren't working in this way, we didn't identify that subgroup as a subgroup in need. So now we know that. But I think one of the things that Ms. Kaiser is trying to point out is we also recognize that beyond anything specific we might do to support this particular subpopulation, we've also identified over the course of this year working in this guardrail area that we had weaknesses both in our multi-tiered systems of support structure and, in some of our other structures. And so that's why, one of the things that we're doing is as we identify this is a problem area, we're trying to provide better and new inputs. And one of those new inputs for this process is the restructure to have the director position and the 4 student support specialists. So that way our MTSS system gets better and stronger and hopefully acts as a safety net for groups like this. But that doesn't mean we're just going to rely on, well, that'll get better and therefore 6th grade, male SPED students won't be a problem. Now that we're aware of this group, we will certainly look at specific interventions to make certain that we're addressed.
And I appreciate you saying that on record, because I guess when these questions are being asked, that's the kind of transparency and truth that I think is expected when it's given back to the governing board, right? If we didn't have anything, then that's what, should be added. There's nothing but moving forward, or that kind of, instead of going through, every single thing that we have been doing. I think this question was geared more of like, okay, we obviously see this group, what are we doing with that? But thank you for that explanation. And if I could possibly ask for this answer to be amended to kind of match what Mr. Superintendent Matt said, so we can have an actual record of what we're going to be working forward. Just because what I personally like to do is I do take all the reports, and as questions are being asked, I look at, as the reports are coming through, and I want to see, certain stuff notated and know that we're actually working towards what's being said, because this is very broad to me. And I think the questions are geared more for intention and how can we shift these systems to make sure that we're not continuing to get these type of results.
I appreciate, thank you for that feedback. And that is something I can work to be able to make clearer on those areas of growth as well. So I appreciate that feedback very much. You bet. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I do want to add that the multi-tiered system of support, to reiterate with Superintendent Mann said, has not been systematic. Like we have it in different at each school. And so Dr. Burgess is in our teaching and learning team is going to systematize that. And part of that was the EduClimber, to be able to see all of our students' data in one place. And having Sabres will also go into EduClimber so we can see our data, our survey results, along with all the student data to be able to identify students. And that's the work of this year, is really strengthening our multi-tier systems of support. And also that tier 1 is really going to be ruler to start out. And we haven't done any training really on that. And Dr. Burgess and her team want to go to training in September so that they can implement that with our leaders. And that's going to be kind of tier 1. Let's start there first and making sure every student has that foundation at our school. So it's going to be a lot of work. And this is the question that we have the most work to do this year, because last year we did a lot with language. We're working on literacy, working on math, and now we're, and that's part of the reason we had the position, so we can start figuring out how we can strengthen this area.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I don't know if anybody else has any questions or comments regarding this specific topic.
Yeah, just a follow-up as to the collaboration among school psychologists and special education team members. I know that there's been, for the last several years, some turnover there, and we're going to have a lot of new staff in that bucket. What's the plan in terms of getting them here to hit the ground running to be able to meet those needs and kind of meld into the system here?
Thank you for that question. That is a challenge when we're having the turnover with that momentum and that understanding. We have one returning school psychologist coming back next year. We do have almost all of our positions filled, one vacancy still. And so that is part of our kickoff for the year, is that onboarding. And we do recognize that as a challenge, as an area of need. And part of what our work is this summer is getting that onboarding developed and started. So that's our work we're doing right now. Part of that's really emphasizing the focus of our ESS department is in this SOFG goals, making sure that we have that common language and that we're moving in that focus area. Another area that we have changed a little bit differently this year is when we have the two new managers, which are coordinator positions, we have more oversight and collaboration and leadership for ongoing professional learning communities with each of those subgroups. board member. So that is a huge focus that we do have. We also very much recognize that the boots on the ground, our colleagues on the campuses, are the ones that know the students best and have that most connection with our students. So our restructuring of our ESS department with the 2 coordinators, we are organizing that a little bit differently so that we do have more of that collaboration, onboarding, professional development to be responsive to what that looks like throughout the year. So that is a shift, and we do identify that as a need. So that's something we're intentionally focusing on right now as we prepare for the year, to be more connected with our school psychologists, to be more part of identifying where their strengths are, what areas of professional development need. And we look to really do that well through surveys and getting to know them in more regular meetings, which we did not do last year to this year. So that's something a little bit different that we look forward to. And we are hopeful, and we are intentional that that will hopefully yield more support and more common language, and better our school psychologists and teams to be more responsive to the schools as well. So something a little bit different from this year to next.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank you.
your time.
Okay, our next question, Mr. Carvajal will answer. How are we building coherence between what the Family Resource Center offers and what schools communicate as support systems? Are these 2 ecosystems aligned?
I really appreciate this question because our department, we live and breathe these services. And so we can talk about all day about what we do. But sometimes we forget that other people may not know exactly what happened in our department or in our specific role. And so I want to let you know that Creighton is a very unique place, just so you know, that we do not rely on one person at district office or one person per school. We have 3 different sections to address all of the spectrum and the long range of needs of our families. And we have 3 main entry points. The first point, which is a direct contact and student, is the school outreach specialists, our CEOs, and there are one of them at each one of our schools. And what they do is they're the first line of defense, and they provide support to students and families, immediate assistance or referrals to appropriate services. And then they sometimes refers families to the Family Resource Center or to the Adult Learning Center. The Family Resource Center is thanks to the partnership of First and First. And so we have a strict alignment on an emphasis on early literacy, but then we know that the need is so great that we have offered and extended other services that attract the community, that have those little ones. And then once there are clients, then we can provide whatever the grant says we need to provide. As a note, I just want to say that for the last 6 years, the Family Resource Center, in that alignment with the grant and the need to fight the decline in open enrollment, we do the kinder boot camp. And so every summer, we want to say, not capture, but attract anywhere from 40. It feels sometimes that we're going knocking on the doors, but 40 to 50 new kindergartens for the district. So that's at least 2 classrooms right there to help and to distinguish, because not all of the districts offer a kinder boot camp. And also another things that we do to fight the decline in enrollment, to make ourselves well known in the community, we do the yearly kindergarten testing exam. Again, that's not something that other districts do, and other districts offer those services of testing for kids that are not yet 5. By the deadline of August 31st, they charge those services. We do not charge. Any of our services are free for the families. And then the other center that we have, besides the outreach specialists, we go by tiers. Then the Family Resource Center, we have the Adult Learning Center. And that Adult Learning Center was where the historical philosophy of the district to serve the community started with that center. And then we grew into the outreach specialists, and then we grew into the Family Resource Center with the partnerships. And at that learning center, we take care of the adults. We provide English classes, GED classes, and other services and support. And so, yes, we have all of these services, but still many people don't know. And maybe you as the governing board members didn't know that we have these 3 main points. And so as a director of that department, it's something that I constantly am like, I know, but to all the people know. And with the knowing comes the referrals. And so one of the ways that I like to tell you that we make this information available is to flyers, to cafecitos, to our website, in every meeting, through PTO, to interviews that we do with Univision and anybody who is willing to listen to us. In addition, at the beginning of the year, the manager of the Family Resource Center and myself, we send out dates to the principals, and then we ask for 15 minutes of their time so we can present all of these services in 3 main checkpoints to the staff members. Why? Because the staff members are the ones that are help us with the referrals. If they hear what's happening, if they see a need, they know how to connect them with. However, one of the things that we have encountered is that if I need something, I'm going to persevere until that need is met. If I don't need, if I'm not in that situation, I'm going to say, this is great information. And then I'm going to put it aside. I'm going to continue about my day or my work, and I'm going to forget about. And many of us have gone to many conferences, and we get handouts and binders, and we don't need them. And so they just stay until we need them. And so we know that it's very important to have that coherence, that everybody knows what services that we have. And so it's something that I welcome the question, I welcome the challenge, and we're going to be better communicating to every stakeholder, from staff members, students, families, community members, so they know that they have 3 different tiers to get their service needs and their needs met.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carbajal. Do we have any questions or comments on this?
I have a wondering, and this popped up as you were speaking, because as a parent and having done the PTO, I recognize how really hard it is to get the message out and for people to pay attention to it and to recognize that. Anyway, so it got me to thinking about the newsletter that goes out via email. But I was thinking it'd be cool if we could, whether it's through that newsletter or if there's a paper version where it could be broken down in 3 sections, like the schools or our outreach specialists, the Family Resource Center, and then the Adult Learning Center. So something so everybody can, parents or family, look at and be like, oh, this is going on at the schools. These are the Family Resource Center. Here's what they've got. And then the Adult Learning Center. But something that's repetitive like that, so they know. So it's presented to them again frequently, and then they start looking for it. Because that's one thing I've noticed too. Man, we got such a great resource center. We got such a great learning center. But I think we got to find a way to get more people to know about them and utilize them. And so how do we drive that traffic? And I think whether the newsletter is what popped into my head. So, but a way of highlighting it or breaking it down that way so that it's very, dominant, not predominant. That's not the right word, but
Visible, like an
phase,
infographic.
Family Resource Center, outreach specialist, adult learning. Anyways, that was just my wondering, and I know eventually I'm going to reach back out to you, and because I got all these ideas. I'm the person I need to talk to is Yvonne. So, but not from here. So anyway.
Thank you, Ms. Marquez. And yeah, just being I would agree, just to be a little bit more intentional in the communication, so we are all aware. I do have a couple follow-up questions, and if you don't have the answer, it's okay. But first things first, funds the Family Resource Center. How is the Adult Learning Center and School Outreach Specialist? Well, school outreach, I know it's through Title I funds, right?
Correct.
What about the Adult Learning Center? How's that funded?
Both places are by grants, Title I and First Thing First. And so that takes care of the people, the salary and the benefits of the people. All of the services are free or with donations. A part of my job is to talk to people, tell the story, our needs, and then get their funds. And so everything that we do is based on donations, and the donation can be funds or it can be in kind. That means that bicycle or that toy or that clothes, whatever, goes directly to the families.
And how many Creighton district dollars are given to the Family Resource Center? Do you know?
mm, the grant, first thing first, absorbs all of the cost on the salaries and the benefits.
Okay, and I just say that because I want everybody to be aware that it's fully operating and we see the beautiful things that the Family Resource done, but it is a grant based, and First Things First is an agency that's losing funds. They're in a deficit right now like everybody else, and that is an imperative resource to our community. So if the state starts losing the funding, then they have to cut funds to grantees, which would probably impact what we do. So I love that we're getting more intentional about this, because the reality of it is that the dollars are going out and our families depend on this. I also love that we do the kindergarten boot camp, because even that pipeline students into our K-8 system. So really how we can really support each other and not work in silos as we're facing all these uncertainties around us when it comes to budgets and money. So I just wanted everybody in the community to be aware that we love the Family Resource Center, but it is a grant operated portion of the district, I would say. And unfortunately, they also are in declining funds. And that's something that, you know, eventually maybe we should look into. But I think it would start with better communication. How do we provide that collaboration? Because obviously the more that we go out and talk about it, then the more people will use our resources.
Yes, and we're on our second, the First Thing First grant is 4 years. And so we're on our second cycle. So we're on our 7th year of the grant. But anytime they can say it, you don't get it. And so as part of my job and in conversations that we started with Dr. Pamboy, the executive team, Mr. Men, I've been tasked to reach out and find grants and other ways to support and compensate and extend the services. So I'm up for the challenge. So thank you. So if you have any good friends that are in good positions, please send them my way.
I also wanted to add about this question, because this question talks about coherence, and it kind of goes back to President Carrillo, where you were talking about, you know, what has made us do something different. And one of the things that happened this past year is that Mr. Carvajal was collaborating with the CIA department with this SEI nights, like making sure that we are communicating with our families and sharing with them their student data and how they can support their families at home. The other thing that is Dr. Burgess in her new position is collaborating with Mr. Carvajal about how we can communicate with families about attendance and how we can, those two departments work together to help improve chronic absenteeism and attendance in our schools. And based on part of the funding is looking at the efforts of the Family Resource Center and how is that impacting our student outcomes. And if based on funding, if we need to focus more, the Adult Learning Center part might be an area that we need to outsource to someone else to, you know, get partnerships with someone else to do it, so that Mr. Carvajal and his team can concentrate on how we can improve student outcomes with attendance, SEI, math, and ELA.
That was actually one of the things I was curious about too.
I was gonna, so thank you for bringing that up, because obviously we had some board members that had the same question. And the question that I was gonna ask after this is, how are we capturing the data, especially for the kids that are joining our kindergarten boot camp, or when we have the, you know, parent taught classes at the Family Resource Center? Because at the end of the day, as we talk about in our SOFG framework, student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. That also is helping the families who are raising these kids on, you know, all these things. So when they're being transferred to our schools, how many of those kids from the camp actually make it to our kindergarten, and are there academics? And I'm hoping FastBridge can help us tag the kids. But yeah, really work in collaboration, because one of the things too that we need to remember is that it's not just about the babies taken care of, but it actually impacts Arizona's workforce right now. If parents right now do not have the access to like the childcare that you just mentioned, the Family Resource Center does, that actually impacts us right now as the parents of those 0 to 5 kids. So how are we tying in that data so we can tell bigger stories on how it's not just that we're creating these beautiful individuals and families, but it also is contributing to the workforce and economic development of Arizona as a whole.
And that's part of why we've been aligning our tool sets. So it won't be the answer to all of those things, but as you so correctly surmised, tools like EduClimber gives us tool sets where we can, identify group subpopulations of students by a variety of different means, and then be able to look at what are the differentials with those students, not only academically, but even behaviorally, based on the fact that the system will also align to discipline data, to the survey data from SABRS as we migrate to that. So, in the long term, we'll have a lot stronger system for being able to answer those questions, and yet we will also probably still find some places where there's gaps, where there's certain things that it's difficult to capture for, and that may require further alignment of systems or the addition of additional systems.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about this framework. It's always continuous, right? We always can improve and be better at something. So that's never the question. Like, we know that we're always a work in progress, regardless of what angle we're looking at it, whether it's our resource, data, SEL, like we're always continuously getting better.
I think I kind of, in connection to some of the things that Dr. Pombo said, and you had previously said that all three of these things are covered by entirely by First Things First grant, correct?
Except for the school outreach specialist.
Okay, but the Adult Learning Center is covered by that. So, and you had mentioned this idea of possibly finding another funding source for that. Currently, the way it's tied to First Things First, are only folks that have children then that come in for those literacy services then eligible to get into the Adult Learning Center programs? Or is anyone from our community able to utilize the Adult Learning Center?
Yes, our services at the Adult Learning Center and the Family Resource Center are open to anybody.
Okay.
Not just people who come to the Creighton School District. Since we're funded by First Thing First, and we're in the middle geographically, the north and the south region, we get to serve everybody who walks through our doors for free.
Okay. Are we aware of any other funding sources or grants out there that would cover adult learning that we could?
But Mr. Carvajal's already acquired some. I believe the
Okay.
GED classes, that the cost for those is offset from a grant from the Mexican consulate.
Oh, cool.
So, I mean, he's out there hustling.
I know, I
we
was
just
curious.
we just need more. And so really our conversation was around alignment. So,
Yeah.
are we the right organization to be providing these adult learning services, given that we're replicating services that are provided at local libraries and some of the other local resources? And is it possible that some of our partners, I'll use the example we just had, like the Mexican consulate, if we were to find another provider that we could refer our adults to for GED classes, would the Mexican consulate then be willing to give that same grant for some other purpose for our Family Resource Center to cover a need in our community that's more directly related to serving our students, and that's more directly aligned with our student outcomes focused governance goals? It's not that we don't believe in adult learning, we certainly do, but the question is, if you're trying to be all things to all people, are you able to do all of those things as exceptionally well as you would be able to if you were to narrow your focus and say, we're going to do a few less of these things? We don't want to leave a gap in the community, but if there are other entities within the community that could cover those needs. And I think we have an enormous opportunity moving forward as we look to do the redevelopment of the physical structure of the Family Resource Center, to potentially also find partners that we can work with and bring other entities sort of into the fold and into the physical space and the proximity within the community. And that may create some spaces where we're able to actually have some of those adult services within our actual footprint, but not necessarily have the burden for managing and maintaining and funding that with our community education team, when their efforts might have a bigger impact on student outcomes if they could be redirected to sort of those family language nights and family math nights and some of these other activities.
That's where my concern lies, is whenever we're thinking, I know nobody in Arizona cares about boundaries anymore or whatever, but what I'm trying to get at is our neighborhoods do exist and we have a boundary, so to speak, right? And we know that just like, unlike some other elementary school districts, we have like a little weird geographical geographical thing going on. We have one park. We have no libraries technically in our district. Like, so when I'm thinking, well, where are these people going within our district area?
Yeah.
I'm not thinking of where they're going because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You know, physically speaking, where is the structure? And so like, yeah, we could see if they have something at Saguaro or something like that, but that's where I'm like thinking, okay, where does this exist other
Right.
than us, so to speak, within walking distance for some
Yeah.
people, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of where my concern was at.
And I think that's a very legitimate concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also though appreciate that out of the box thinking though, because part of the framework is realignment of resources and what's serving and what's not, and sometimes hard conversations are gonna have to be had, but that leaves a task. I would say to board members, let's use our powers and make sure that we're going out to the community, to our connections that we have, and seeing who would want to partner with us to make sure that they're filling a need that at the end of the day is going to serve whoever decides to help us too. But I appreciate those hard conversations that are being held, because at the end of the day, this is what this framework is supposed to do, really get us to focus on what we're doing, what we're offering, and where will our resources, as everybody starts losing funds, how are we realigning that to be the best impact for our community? So I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments?
Just gonna
Yeah, of course.
one comment. Many years ago, our alignment was strictly to academics, through the academic parent-teacher teams, the APTTs. And then the pandemic happened, and then we were shift, and then all of our services went into social services and basic needs. Pandemic was 5 years ago, hard to believe. And so now we have to realign and to evolve again into the new needs. And the new needs is the academics. And so it's only going back home. It's full circle. So the alignment is there, the vision is there. It's good to be nimble based on the needs of the communities, responding to the context, political or whatever that is happening. But our first service and commitment is to the students so they can have that academic achievement.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carbajal.
Our next three questions, Dr. Burgers will answer.
Good evening. So our first question is, how do we ensure that the SEL integration is not dependent on teacher buy-in, but instead is built into the systems and routines of every campus? So in order to do that, to ensure that it's happening, we really have to embed it into our Tier 1 instruction. And we have to ensure that it's being intentionally built into the daily routines and in the schedule and in the classrooms. And in order to do that, we have to create space in our school schedules to protect that time for the SEL. Just like we have a time for language arts, we have a time for phonics, we have a time for math, we have to have a time for SEL. So for example, community circles are being used in some of the classrooms as a structured practice for students to process their feelings and engage on problem solving. This helps them develop the strategies for healthy, effective responses. But in order to do that, we have to systematize it across the district and ensure that we have that protected time so that it can happen in all the classrooms across the entire district. Oftentimes teachers sometimes, or myself even, will call it morning meetings. But if there's not time again in that schedule and we just jump right into content, we might be unintentionally not protecting it, not because we don't want to, but because we want to ensure that we're meeting our instructional minutes. The second part of that is that the student support coaches, they're going to be working directly with new teachers and how to integrate the daily SEL practices into their schedule. They model these strategies for them, they co-teach with them, they whisper coach with them, they take them to go and observe other teachers' classrooms, really just to ensure that it's there and they have the supports. They help support them with the classroom management, those structured routines, the SEL, and that intentional time for SEL. It all really goes hand in hand. And this ensures that it's not a separate initiative, but it's really embedded into the approach for classroom management and supports. And then the third component is that we met interim measure 3.1, and we're tracking that progress currently through the Panorama survey data and through our classroom observation. And this really helps ensure that those SEL practices are implemented with fidelity and supports and are adjusted as needed.
Next question.
Yep, thank you. So given the different SEL techniques that are used across the classrooms, how are we supporting professional identity development, especially for teachers in years 3 and 5 who are shaping their instructional culture? So the first component is really that coaching capacity. The student support coaches are not only helping teachers implement SEL into their daily routines, but they're also really helping them understand how these routines influence the classroom tone, the student relationships, the teacher to teacher relationships, the student to teacher relationships, the student to student relationships, and really that effective classroom management. They are that first primary support for their new teachers. They help them really on in their early career. I know they've been instrumental on my campus. I know when I was a brand new teacher or even a year teacher in year 3, if I needed something, the very first person I went to was my coach, and I was like, show me, teach me, come to my classroom. They were my lifesaver. And so our student support coaches often provide that support for them as well. But they also look, and when we talk about it, we want to look at some of those data-informed supports, and we've seen tremendous progress with our of teachers years 3 to 5 with that positive climate in school support. According to our Panorama survey, we've actually surpassed our goal, which is fantastic. And this is really reflective of the culture and climate on the campus, but also the supports that the student support teachers are providing them, as well as the other coaches, teaching and learning team across the district. The student support coaches support with that classroom management. It helps the teachers when they feel successful, and it contributes to that stronger connection to the school. They also provide, like I spoke about earlier, that modeling and that peer sharing is, I know as a learner, many of us, is the best way to see it, or the best way to learn how to do something is to go watch somebody else do it. So oftentimes, all of the teaching and learning team, the student support coaches, they will go and take teachers and say, you've watched me do it in your classroom, but let's go watch this teacher. It's like when you hear something, you know, as a parent, you can tell your kids 20 times, but then they hear from somebody else and then suddenly they get it. So they go into they work with their coaches, they start to understand it, but then they get to go see different teachers that are maybe experts or more proficient in it. And then they really get to see it. And it's those aha moments. And it's like, okay, I can do this. I see, you know, this teacher over here, she's doing it with her group of kids. All right, I'm going to go back and try it in my classroom. And it's that mind shift that happens, like, I can really do this. And it's oftentimes done with that support.
I have a follow-up question. Do teachers have the opportunity to either record themselves as they're teaching or anything so they can actually see themselves? And the only reason why I think that is because I dance a lot, and that's what the number one thing that they make us do is watch yourselves, and then you learn, you're like, oh, that's what I need to do, move differently, or whatever the case is, tone or whatever they're saying. Is that a opportunity that's given, or is that something that's been done?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for that. Is that a lot of the coaches in all of the areas, whether it's been math or ELA or student support, is that they have gone through the training of impact coaching. And part of that process is, it's not mandatory, but it's given as an option to record yourself to see how you teach and see what maybe like support you might need, or there are tiny shifts, things like that you can do, or what are you doing really effective as a teacher. Like I said, it's not mandatory, but it is an option that all of our coaches do with the teachers that they work with.
Okay. Thank you.
I do want to add to that, because part of the research with impact cycle coaching is that the fastest way to get results is for them to see a video. And so we first try to, because you can have someone observe you and tell you, but it's not the same if you see yourself in the video.
Correct.
And so we do give an option because it is kind of a personal thing. And so this past year, we did a lot of, I modeled myself, like having myself recorded, and some of our team members, but that is something we're working toward for people to feel more comfortable having video as part of their coaching cycle.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize that some of the leadership in this team continually is doing that, because I know that Dr. Olgin Pombo and Ms. Shapiro are on the SOFG cohort, and that's one of the things that they make us do is watch ourselves, and then we have to critique ourselves and fix it. So just know that if it's being asked, there's people in leadership already that are continuously doing that for ourselves. So modeling from the top down. So thank you for sharing that.
And it is a little bit of a buzzsaw. I've been advocating for video reflection for over 20 years because I came into K-12 from higher ed, and one of my roles was to develop professor training programs, and one of our required practices was that professors teach class and be videoed and then have time to reflect on that video. So, sometimes things take a while to percolate into K-12 from other arenas, but in the adult learning space, that's been a pretty standard practice for nearly 25 years.
Yeah, and in sports, music, you think about it in the other world, that's even for great public speakers, that's the number one thing that they tell you to do is record yourself and watch. So hopefully that
I was gonna say, I graduated from Mary Lou 16 years ago, and we had to record ourselves there
Yeah.
for all that. So that wasn't very fun, but
hopefully that adult convenience goes away and we start doing it.
I mean, it is definitely hard, but what I've seen benefits as a principal in that my teachers, whether they've been a new teacher or they've been with us for multiple years, the relationships that they're building with their coaches and that they feel like safe. No one wants to watch themselves being recorded. I don't. But I did the same thing in my teacher program. But when they go and I did that when all through career ladders, we had to watch ourselves be recorded and reflect on it and make adjustments and things like that. And so with the relationships that we're building with the coaches, the first step is like, just record yourself. You don't even have to send it to me. Just record yourself and then watch yourself. And then it becomes like, okay, now record yourself and then you can look at it and then I'll look at it and we can talk about it. And to the point where by the end of the year, it was, look, I recorded myself. I want you to see. And they would send it to us as like the principal or the assistant principal to see like, look how much I've been working and look how much I've been growing in this area.
Awesome. Thank you.
So the next question is, how are climate and culture data from students and teachers being brought together in a single dashboard or reflection space to reveal alignment or disconnects?
So EduClimber is our new district unified platform that I think all of us are still learning a bit. We had that full day training, but it was a long training. And so definitely I'm processing through and still learning how to use it. At this point in time, I'm honestly not sure if Panorama is compatible with it or not, which is why we're looking at Sabres and Fastbridge because we know it will be. I know we've been exploring those alternatives for the future, looking at Sabres. We don't want to just jump right into it because we don't have any baseline data yet. So really looking at it this year for that baseline data and then adjusting to see, are we going to renew Panorama or are we going to move fully to Sabres? However, it's going to also collect that behavioral data, the academic data, all of that right now is in EduClimber. And then we're going to be working on how to add the interventions and the restorative practices and supports so that we have it all in one platform rather than grabbing it from multiple different areas. Like I said, we're still really learning how to run all of those. I was just running some this morning and messaging with people back and forth on how to pull some information. We're also going to be partnering with other districts to learn about their current structures and systems in place in order to track interventions, whether it be behavioral or academic supports needed. And then lastly, we are going to be restructuring how we do the MTSS teams. And so that we're using EduClimber as our platform for all of that data rather than having to go to a cumulative filter, having to go to Panorama or having to go to Panorama for student perception data, having to go to Fastbridge or all of those different areas. Everything is just housed in one. And it's really great to see that full profile of the student. So it's going to be even more powerful when we can add those interventions and supports to see if it's working or not working. And then do we need to adjust?
The next question is, what ways are we ensuring that supports like SEL, family resources, and new teacher mentorship are not dependent on the school level leadership quality, but guaranteed by the system design? I think this is me.
This is you. Were there any questions?
Yes.
no.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So it's going to start obviously with professional development and capacity building and training for our leaders and how we can implement all of these systems and make sure that they're kind of standardized frameworks and resources and curriculum integration. So a lot of that is happening with the community of practice. So we have a community practice for each area. So for what that means is like there's a group of principals, coaches, and a content expert in a group, and trying to decide what does it look like in the classroom, and then deciding what those key indicators are and making sure that we're all aligned to those same indicators. So it's just really standardizing frameworks and what we're looking for in the classrooms, where there's clear roles and responsibilities that are discussed in our leadership council meetings. And then obviously data-driven accountability, which has to do with EduClimber. And also another thing that we're implementing is it's called Classroom Mosaic, where we can see all of our learning walks across the district. So we can see when the DataWise team went in, when the principal went in, and when a coach went in. So we can see, on Wednesday, this is how many second grade classrooms were visited and what we're seeing in our second grade classroom. So aligning all of these platforms that are easy to look at data. And then obviously feedback. This is another question. Do you believe having stricter cell phone policies that keep phones out of the classrooms could help improve our students' social and emotional well-being? And this one, we just say we really have to research that one further, specifically to understand the frequency of cell phone distraction, which grade levels are most affected. I know in my experience of going into the classrooms, I haven't seen cell phones as an issue in the classroom. But I do know from, some research about cell phones is that if you have, and I don't know if it's more of a high school thing too, but there's more focus and there's decreased cyberbullying, but it hasn't been an area that has come up in our learning walks or working with principals.
Thank you for clarifying that maybe that's not an issue that we're having at the district at the moment. Then do we know what might be causing this disparity in certain subgroups responses between fall and spring? Is it mostly a lack of participation in the survey? And I looked really closely at the survey and all the kids' responses. And to start off with, the fall survey, we had 272 students respond, which 17% of our 6th through 8th grade students. In the spring, we had 236, which is 15% of our 6th through 8th grade students. So it's a very small amount of students that have responded, and we really do want to increase the survey engagement, but the challenge with it is you have to have parent permission. So we're hoping that looking closely at the SABRs and looking at the policy, what type of permission we need from parents so we could have more participation. So it is difficult to draw a conclusion about that subgroup with the amount of students that we have taking the survey.
And I just want to create clarity on one thing. The piece that's getting in the way with this is that a few years ago, the legislature passed a law that said that for certain types of social emotional survey work, that it could no longer be an opt-out if you didn't want your child to participate. It had to be an opt-in. And so, one of the things, that we heard frequently from our families is many of our families, are 2 income earner families, or they're single parents, that are also the income earner in their household. So a lot of times being put in the position of having to complete a permission form in order to allow your child to participate is an additional burden for our families, and it makes it a lot harder than if we were able to say at the beginning of the year, ask people to opt out of anything that they don't want their child to participate in. And so personally, I'm troubled by that choice by the legislature, because I really feel it is an impediment to us serving our families in the way that they would like to be served. But obviously there were certain specific, political concerns that were being addressed by the passing of that law.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I just had would it be possible to do that permission at the beginning of the year with registration? And
It is a possibility. There was a lot of specificity around how that permission works, and so that is part of what we're looking into. We're also looking into, with, as Dr. Pombo pointed out, with the SABR survey, it's possible that the structure of the questions is slightly different, and that may change the nature of the request. So we had the Panorama survey. We kind of put it through a couple of paces with some, folks with legal expertise to say, like, do we have to with this one? And the answer was yes, but we haven't had a chance to do that same thing with the SABR's question sets yet.
And to follow up after that, if we replace Panorama with SABR's, then these interim measures, we would be starting over with our data.
Yeah, so that's the reason why
Assuming we get, pass the permission and then the
Yeah.
participation.
Yeah, so that's the reason why we're looking to run Panorama in parallel for one more year in order to have a year where both surveys are given. So that way we can create a correlation between the two survey data sets. So that way we can still leverage the existing longitudinal data from Panorama. So in order to be able to sort of crosswalk that Panorama data trajectory into the new data set trajectory, we need a year where we're able to kind of put the two side by side. And we currently, our contract with Panorama runs through March of the upcoming year. And so that gives us the opportunity to deliver both a fall and a spring Panorama survey in addition to delivering the Sabre survey.
Thank you for bringing that up. And that was one of the questions, wonderings that I have, and it doesn't have to be answered right now. It's just that I know that when my son was in 6th through 8th grade, there was certain forms that I filled extra for him, especially when it came to like the sex ed conversations or whatever. So as a system-wide district change and, you know, changing systems, I'm wondering if that can be an automatic sheet that happens, you know, eventually when you first meet your teacher, it gets explained to them. I understand the burdens, and also I do feel that sometimes communication is the biggest key. If you're not telling families or guardians or parents on the necessity and the importance, which can take a while to explain, and I also understand that, then there's a disconnect on the importance of filling it out. So I think that there's various ways that we can simplify that by having just a sheet, kind of like the one that I have to fill out every time I do enrollment for taking pictures. You know, that's something I have to opt into. So if this is something that we really want to focus, that's just an idea or wondering that I have that we can implement at a systems change.
And that's what we're looking into, because there's different rules around each of those sets of permissions. So we just need to find out which rules apply to what and how can we reduce the administrative burden. The other piece, and Mr. Denault's not with us tonight, but I know his team has been working on creating online form access, which also makes it less of a burden for parents to not have to deal with paper forms.
Awesome. Thank you.
Do we have an understanding as to why male students are submitting a lower level of satisfaction with regards to self-management? It's the same thing about increasing the survey response. But I think also we could engage directly with our students and get that street data and talk to our, male students to see why they're having more challenging time with self-management. And I think it goes back to our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 with Ruler and how we're supporting our students. I think that's the last question for Guardrail 1.
Yes, I believe it is. Do we have any other questions or comments for Guardrail 1? I know that was a lot of information, but thank you. We really appreciate that. Now that the discussion has been held, I will move, well, guardrails, we don't approve them, so never mind. We move on to guardrail, is it the same one?
Guardrail 3.
Guardrail 3, report 2. Thank you, my computer froze.
So Dr. Lauren and I will be presenting this one together. And Guardrail 3, the superintendent will not allow the district to operate without a system to recruit and retain strong teachers by empowering staff through culturally relevant and differentiated professional development.
So interim measure 3.1, as a reminder, is the number of teachers sponsored by the district through H-1B and J-1 visa programs will increase from 11 in 23-24 school year to 22 in 2024-25 school year. As a reminder, H-1B and J-1 visas are both non-immigrant visa programs that allow people to work that are internationally trained and international citizens to come to the U.S. And there are different restrictions and purposes for each program. J-1 is an exchange program, a cultural exchange, and the goal of that is to really open up a dialogue between members of different cultures in different countries and have our students experience the difference in those values and mores and experiences of those kinds of teachers. So it is also clear that it's an exchange program, so it's limited in the scope as far as the amount of time that the individuals can be part of the program. They do have an expectation to return to their home country at the end of that J1 experience, which can be between 3 and 5 years, depending. And then H1B is a more straightforward employment-based program that requires the district sponsor directly visa candidates, and they're needing to meet the requirements for eligibility for teaching in our Arizona state requirements as well as federal requirements.
And then interim measure 3.2, the percent of teachers with 3 to 5 years of experience who report positive responses on indicators of school climate on the Panorama survey will increase from 50% in May of 2024 to 55% in May 2025. And this is the Panorama survey that is measuring social emotional learning adult measures on the survey. And we looked at the school climate on this survey.
So looking at our measure for the guardrail 3.1, overall, there are 22 international teachers that are on H-1B and J-1 visas that are currently employed by the district. Just to give you a little bit of information about moving forward, we did have 2 of those candidates that have separated from the district at the end of the year. We have also hired 2 teachers, so we will be constant at 22. So we have met this measure with the goal of 22 for this time period, and that's a positive. I think there's a question later on, so I don't want to spoil the question, but about what's happening with regard to immigration currently. I think that has impacted the work that we're doing with the visa program, and we'll address that a little bit.
Okay, interim measure 3.2. Our goal was to increase from 50% to 55%, and you could see that it went to 70%. Some of our teachers are modeling conversations and language techniques that help students process and express their emotions in ways that help the students individually and promote a healthy school climate. The community circles, which Dr. Burgers talked about earlier, are being used in some classrooms as a venue for problem solving, processing feelings, and to build strategies for healthy and effective responses to scenarios. We met this interim measure. And this is an area that the teacher, especially the new teachers, 3 to 5 years, had more support with the student support coaches with their classroom environment.
Before you move on, I just want to give an amazing shout out for all the work that we've been doing, because you can tell that we've been stagnant at 50-50. The last Panorama survey that I remember in last February had a lot of negative feedback, even from peer-to-peer teachers, that they weren't being treated respectfully within each other and staff members. So that was a hard conversation to have, and hear that from our staff. And the fact that we're at 70% shows that not only alignment and clarity and as the collaborative work that we've been doing actually does have not only systems shifts, but also culture shifts. So I'm really happy to see that. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. What is working?
Sure. The number of international teachers on H-1B and J-1 visas has doubled from last year, promoting a diverse faculty and bringing background experiences that are shared by many of our students. I think in a previous conversation, we mentioned that a lot of the J-1 and H-1B visa teachers are coming from northern Mexico, from Sonora and Hermosillo specifically. So that really aligns with, I think, cultural values and experiences of our students that are part of our district, as well as many of our teachers. Percentage of teachers, that's you.
Well, yeah. The percentage of the just basically what you just highlighted, President Carrillo, is the percentage of teachers with 3 to 5 years of experience responding favorably to indicators of climate and culture has grown to 70% since last year, with teachers reporting the use of varied social emotional learning techniques to promote individual social emotional well-being and healthy school climate. What needs more attention?
So there are unique challenges for our international teachers. Learning the differences and similarities between the American system of education and the system in their country of origin, building social connections with peers across the district who have similar backgrounds and experiences, as well as the impact of the visa process that's being affected by current federal action.
And the use of social emotional learning techniques such as language modeling for reflection and expression and community circles is not consistent across all schools and classrooms. So that's something we're working on for next year. And then here we have, I think we had 3 board questions. So the first one is, do you believe having stricter cell phone policies that keep phones out of the classrooms would help recruit and retain teachers? This would be hard to answer without asking the teacher specifically, but most success in this area is more reliant on the teacher's capacity and classroom management skills. And we haven't had an issue, but if there was an issue with cell phone problems, I think it would improve classroom management, student engagement, and clearer expectations.
The next question is related to stay interviews. The question being, do we conduct stay interviews to see why our long-term teachers choose to remain in our district? As some of you who were on the board last year may recall, in the professional agreement that was approved by the board in 23-24, there was a request to conduct stay interviews. If you're not familiar with what the stay interview protocol is, it's used across many industries. It's not just specific to education, but it's used in corporate settings and other nonprofit settings. Essentially, the idea of a stay interview is not to conduct an exit interview where you're getting feedback from individuals who are leaving the organization, rather to be intentional in having conversations with individuals who are intent to stay or perhaps considering not staying, and then what are some of the things that we can do as a leadership team to make sure that we offer them support or find out what it is that is prompting them to leave. So sort of the, why do you want to stay? What are some triggers or what are some reasons why you would leave? And then the third is actually doing a little deeper dive into what can I do as a leader to support you? The stay interview protocol is not meant for all employees. The idea of the stay interview is to focus on what's called a highly valued employee, an HVE. So you don't blanket survey your team. You survey 10% of your team, and you use that information to help kind of guide where you are in your site or your department. This year, we asked our sites, every school conducted stay interviews, not just for certified employees, but also for ESP or classified employees. We also had 3 departments that participated in that process. And so we had a pretty good result of participation. We had 71 certified teachers that participated in the process. We had 48 classified employees. So that's above the 10% mark of all of our employees together. We have about 700 employees together, classified and certified. But we felt like there's a lot of good information to be gained from having those conversations. If you've participated in a stay interview, you know that that process is much more conversational. It's much more qualitative in its approach rather than quantitative in X, Y, and Z, numbers and percentages. However, it can be quantified, and we did do that. So I do have a document of all the results that I can share with you at the next board update. And I specifically want to focus, because this question really was related to the long-term teachers choosing to remain in the district. I can disaggregate that data between different levels of experience in the district or in the profession, actually. So when we did that designation, we looked at novice teachers, which would be between 0 and 2 years of experience, continuing teachers, which is that 3 to 5 year range, established teachers, and then we call them veteran teachers for those that are above 11 years of experience. So I'm happy to provide that information for you and disaggregate the data in a slightly different way than I did now analyzed prior. And this just sort of gives you a summary of what that information was, rather than having me read the slide to you. That's basically what are some of the key takeaways from that process in that stay interview that was conducted in February. So the next question, does interim measure 3.1 need to be adjusted due to holds on the new J1 H1B visa application? This was like a quite a moving target over the last few weeks, and I know that we're all aware of sort of what's happened on the ins and outs, specifically with the question of immigration on a federal level. We were notified, and I think I put in a board update a couple of weeks ago, that there was a pause placed on J1 visa application process. So it did not affect our current employees who have J1 visas. It affected those who are not approved for J1s yet, that had appointments at embassies or consulates across different countries, where they would have to go and have their appointment to then be able to be move forward in the process to have their visa approved. That freeze was in place for several weeks, and it was just lifted last week on the 17th, I want to say.
You could go to that.
Yeah. So I think it would be a conversation for the board to have about whether or not this interim measure needs to change or what that needs to look like moving forward. What I will say is, anecdotally, we are very supportive of our international teachers. We do have some teachers that we're currently working with our immigration lawyer to sponsor for residency, which would move them from the H-1B or process to a more permanent status. So I think we've got about 3 employees that we're working with.
Oh my God, that melts my heart. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's awesome, especially because we have 2 dual language schools, and I know that it's imperative to the work that those schools do to have, people whose Spanish is their actual first home language. So I appreciate that. Do we have any other questions or comments?
I have a comment or wondering. So I went back from our previous meeting when we went over goal 3 it was. So and you had listed the different languages that are spoken in the district. And I think 3rd one was Somali. So my wondering was, is there a way to try to find some teachers from Somalia who might want to come and teach? But I know everything's kind of on pause or up in the air with
I think
with
one of
that,
the issues,
but I don't know.
sorry to interrupt, but I know. I think one of the issues with that is that there are several different dialects and languages spoken in Somalia, and there are some that are most folks know, but I think it's a little more difficult when it gets to the other less spoken languages.
I can also share that there are specific countries where there has been a hold placed on J1 visa applications. So I think there are about 27 currently that are on that list. And they're countries from all sorts of different areas of the world. We do have a partnership. One of the organizations that we work with is IAG, and they have a database that we can actually go in and we can look by country and by need. So if I wanted to hire a band teacher, band is on my mind because we need a band teacher. But just as an example, I could go in and I could look to see if there's a general music or band certified in their country person that would be eligible for sponsorship as a J1 exchange teacher. So that is available to us. We're a little late in the process to have someone start for the beginning of the year. I think some of our J1 candidates that started last year with us came toward the end of the first quarter when we hired them in July. So, we would probably look ahead or we can continue to work that process, but with the delays that are now in place, we would be talking about later in the school year having them
Right.
come in.
Yeah. Just future reference. I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 2 things I think that are important to note is that the team is currently evaluating interim measures for recommendation for next year based on the work of the leadership team in the first week of June. And that's something that we'll likely be looking at our study session in August. But in addition to that, we'll be looking at appropriate interim measures for the guardrails as well. And this may be one that we bring an alternate measure to the board for a variety of reasons, not just some of the volatility with the federal government, but we really did exceptionally well in this area. And some of our needs have shifted because one of the things that's happened over the course of this year, I don't want to say this out loud because it makes me so nervous, but we're in a much better place as far as hiring for the fall than we were this time last year, thanks to Dr. Laura and his team, the hard effort of our principals and our staff members. So, so that sometimes that changes the nature of what the need is in the district. And we may bring a different recommendation for a measure. And then one of the things that I have learned from Dr. Pombo and Ms. Shapiro from their learnings in their SOFG cohort is that in the arena of interim measures, sometimes things like a change in federal program causes a need to shift an interim measure for a guardrail. And that is something that programmatically the student outcomes focused governance framework allows for a superintendent to then come back and say, hey, there's been a shift here and we need to look at changing this interim measure. So if we were to choose to continue with this measure and it were to become a problem next year, then that would obviously be something that we would be bringing back to you as a recommendation.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. With that, it looks like we are concluding our 4.8 student outcomes focused governance and our guardrail reports. Thank you so much for all that information and the back and forth conversations. That brings us to 5A, which is public comments. Ms. Juarez, do we have any public comments? No. Thank you. Brings us to 6, approval of consent. I move the governing board approve consent agenda items A through M.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, that brings us to 8A. We're just filled with amazing new roles. And that brings us to 8A, which is approval of Director of Bond. And Dr. Lauren, we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We're pleased to bring several recommendations to you this evening. It was wonderful to be able to celebrate with Ms. Hernandez and her family earlier. The Director of Bonds, and it actually is Bonds and Construction. After a comprehensive search, 10 viable applicants were identified for the Director of Bond projects. The top 4 candidates underwent an in-basket activity, followed by interviews with a 12-person panel. The panel recommended the top 3 candidates to the superintendent's executive team for final interviews, and Benjamin Parker is the recommended candidate. Benjamin Parker has over 15 years of experience in operations, leadership, and project management. He has served in various roles, including Chief Operating Officer, Director of Operations, and Operations Manager at Phoenix Rescue Mission, where he oversaw multi-million-dollar budgets, large-scale construction projects, and strategic facility planning. Benjamin has also held leadership positions, managing high revenue operations and fostering strong vendor relationships. He is actively involved in his community, serving as a board member for the Creighton Community Foundation, the Spring Church, and as a past board president of the Creighton Academy PTO. Mr. Parker is a graduate of Whitworth University with a Bachelor of Arts degree, earning cum laude honors and a minor in Spanish.
Thank you so much for that. And I know that the candidate's not in person and they are on vacation, but congratulations. And with that, I move the governing board approve Benjamin Parker for the position of Director of Bond effectively July 1st, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, motion passes. And if they're watching, congratulations to Mr. Parker. That brings us to 8B, which this is so exciting. It is the approval of Director of Facilities and Transportation. And Dr. Lauren, here we go again.
All right. A comprehensive search for the Director of Facilities and Transportation involved in advertising across various platforms, including our recruitment system, Arizona Department of Education, ASPA, LinkedIn, and ASPO. From 10 viable applicants, the top 4 underwent an in-basket activity. A 12-person panel then conducted interviews with these candidates, recommending the top 3 for the finalist interview. The superintendent's executive team conducted final interviews, and Jeff Geyer is recommended for this position. Jeff Geyer has been serving in educational roles within the Creighton School District since 1998. He has held various positions, including classroom teacher at Monte Vista School, assistant principal at Loma Linda School, principal at Papago School, principal of Creighton Virtual Academy, and most recently as principal at Excellencia School. Mr. Geyer was recognized as Creighton Principal of the Year in spring 2023. He has extensive experience in instructional leadership, budget management, community relations, and strategic planning within the district. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Education from Arizona State and a Master's in Educational Leadership from Northern Arizona University.
With that, I move the governing board approve Jeffrey Geyer for the position of Director of Facilities and Transportation effective July 1st, 2025. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, motion passes. Congratulations, Ms. Fair. I don't know if you want to share a few words. If you don't, you don't have to, but we're so excited to have you in this new position. Yeah, come up. Yes, of course.
Don't fall.
Madam President, members of the board, executive team, just want to thank Vanessa Shapiro and Joel Lauren and Scott Wells for putting together a process that challenged me as a candidate to consider the roles and responsibilities through the lens of student outcomes. It was different that way. You know, it seems like, oh, we just do facilities and buses and there's more to it. Everything that we do has to manifest somehow in student learning, student satisfaction, family satisfaction in our communities. And that's what I hope to bring into this role. I want to thank Mr. Mann for the recommendation and to the board for the support. And I want to say happy anniversary to my wife.
Oh, congratulations.
Big 19. So
Congratulations. What a way to celebrate. New job and many more years to come for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bad that they're hanging out.
And then with that, we have 8C, approval of principal for Excellencia Elementary School.
When the vacancy for Excellencia as principal opened with the promotion of the current principal, the district reviewed top applicants from the prior principal hiring processes. In both instances, one applicant received high levels of feedback, and the top candidate in both processes was invited to participate in a meeting with teachers, staff, and students, where they were able to hear the candidate's thoughts on culture, community engagement, equity, data-driven leadership, and building teacher and student relations. The team reached consensus on recommending Nicholas Lodato.
Awesome.
Nicholas Lodato has 22 years of experience in education. As principal of Emerson School from 2019 to the present, he improved its rating from D to B, secured over $100,000 in grants, implemented initiatives like Teacher Clarity Playbook and Visible Learning, and increased third grade reading scores from 20% to nearly 80% in 3 years. Previously, as assistant principal at Isaac Middle School from 2016 to 2019, he administered policy, supervised staff, led professional development, designed the communications plan, and redesigned discipline with restorative practices. His earlier roles include Dean of Students, 6th grade teacher, training and field specialist, middle school teacher, elementary school teacher, and Teach for America Core member and curriculum specialist. He holds a master's in education from Columbia University and a Bachelor of Science from Indiana University.
I just wanted to say I had the opportunity to go to the, my brain is fried right now. What did we call it?
Focus group.
Focus group. Was
Meet
it
and
called?
greet.
Meet and greet. Okay.
Focus.
Was that last week?
Yes.
Yes.
It's all
Okay.
blurring.
That was also last week at Excellencia, and I really appreciated just how open he was to the back and forth there. I mean, there was a lot of pre-submitted questions, and then there were also just like an open dialogue. There were people online, and there were people there in person. And one thing I also appreciated, and because it's hard for me to do this, and that's why I admire it in other people, is when he was being asked questions on the spot that maybe he needed a second to think about, he has no problem pausing even in the front of a group of people and like really thinking about what he's going to say before he says it. And so I just really appreciated how candid he was and got a good feeling from things. And I'm really hoping that things work out. Obviously, some of the things that I heard there were just like kind of the need and the real want and eagerness to have some long-term like consistency there. And so the staff are really hopeful and eager to have that moving forward. And I'm hopeful as well. So I'm excited that this all worked out.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Gibson McLean. And with that being said, I'm so excited to move the governing board approve Nicholas Lodato for the position of principal of Excelencia Elementary School District effective July 1st, 2025. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, motion passes. And just with wrapping this up, I am going to double down on what Mr. Joel said, and that these positions, I have full confidence that they were the best decisions for our district. Time in and time again, we hear that Creighton is a very unique district from any other district out there with the student out focused governance work that we do, and it really should be embedded in all facilities in all different departments and not just in the coaching or instructional or student learning. So I appreciate the vision coming from the cabinet and the leadership team to make those choices. With that being said, we move to 11A, which is the approval of suspending policy BGB and approving the trust policy manual. We've had some conversations about this. Do we have any additional comments or questions? All right. With hearing none, Ms. Ayers, did you have any questions or comments?
No.
Okay. With that being said, we move the governing board approve to suspend policy BGB and approve the entire policy with the trust. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, that brings us to 12A, future agenda items. Do we have any future agenda items? Hearing none, that moves us to 13A, and I move the governing board adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, motion passes. Muy buenas noches. Thank you to everybody. Have a great night. I'm putting out a new calendar for you guys.